only card game. That's at 10:30. But now, Shaw Taylor presents The Law Game.
Do you know the law? You can discover that by joining us in The Law Game. It's an entertainment in which three well-known personalities will attempt to judge the results of law cases and hope to give the proper legal reasons for their verdict. Judging the judges, as usual, is our own layman's lawman, your chairman, Shaw Taylor.
Thank you very much indeed, and good evening to you. Well, we've got three more fictitious cases for our Law Game Repertory Company to act out for you. Each one is based on an actual case involving the same points of law. When I think we've furnished enough facts, I shall signify that by bashing my ding-a-ling thus. And that rather tame tinkle tells the panel it's their turn to spring into action and deftly debate the evidence they've heard before delivering their own verdict. Now, we call this the law game because of the gaming element in which I give each member of the panel 50 points to bet with. They invest as many of those points as their confidence dictates on backing the side that they think won the case. I will match their points if they are right, and I'll give them odds of 2 to 1 if they come up with the right legal reasons. Tonight's three celebrities are immediately recognizable to all listeners as Nigel Reese, Gene Rook, and William Franklyn. Nigel Reese, game show inventor and presenter, author of countless books. You ever had a brush with the law?
I have indeed. I'm a very law-abiding person, you understand. But I was once doing a program rather similar to the one that you do on TV, except that this one was called Police File, and we helped the police to catch criminals. That was the basis of it. The very same police put parking tickets on our cars outside the studio, and this didn't go down too well. And one day I bearded one of these policemen. I said, "Sonny," I said, "why are you putting this ticket on my car when it's not in a no parking area, there are no yellow lines?" And he said, "Well," he said, "in 1932, Mr. Justice Cockle-Carrot, or whatever it was, ruled that if your car was parked for more than so many minutes in a public place, it could constitute an obstruction." And if that police constable was true, what he said was true, well, I'm amazed, and I'm still peeved about it, although that incident happened almost 20 years ago.
Well, we have learned something already on the programme. Let's move on to our next panellist, Gene Rook, the JR of Fleet Street. Well, you've been expressing your views, Gene, for quite a few years now. Have any of your views landed you with litigation?
Nearly with the Queen. No, mine all happened abroad. When I was in Argentina, there was the coup, and I found myself under house arrest because I'd got the wrong coloured hair, dyed blonde, in the hotel. And they said, no, you can't go out. And there's plenty to drink, they said. Well, the third day, I'd had nothing but dry martini for the 3 days. So I thought, I'm going out. So I got my passport in the best sort of prime Miss Jean Brodie way, and I thought, I don't care if they shoot me. And I dashed out into the street holding out my passport. Right, they let me go through to the restaurant. And then they took me down to the airport, and they kept me there for 4 days. And in the end, and I'm a strong lady, but tears just flowed down my face, because apart from anything else, I could have eaten the policeman. And one of them looked at me and he said, "In the name of the good God, lady, do not cry. I, Fernando, will get you to Mexico." And he did.
Well, that's two panellists with a criminal background. Let's move on to the third. William Franklyn, described as the actor with the archetypal Englishman's voice, and research something. You starred in a West End play at the age of 15. What was that?
Well, it was my sister Eileen. I was a childish actor and have remained one ever since.
Have you ever come to blows with the law?
Well, actually, in about the late 50s, I was doing a series called Top Secret, and there was enough conceit in me that I felt I was a bit sort of macho and could use myself. And I was walking up the street in Kensington, and a lady had said, stopped me and said, "By the way, Mr. Franklyn, I'm locked out of my house. Could you help me?" And I said, "Oh, yes, bottom window. Have you got a knife with you?" Because I'd been trained, I said, to get in through windows. All the usual cabbinsman comes out in those situations, being rather gallant. And she said, "No." She said, "But the top window is open on the 3rd floor." So I looked up, and it was one of those Georgian houses, quite tall. So I said, "Oh, well, I'll go up the drain pipe." And I actually, once I'd said it, there was no way back. So I went up the drain pipe, because I had known hand over hand, foot up against the wall. When I was 3/4 of the way, suddenly, he arrived, didn't he? The heavy boot. "Excuse me, sir, where do you think you're going?" And I said, "I'm just about to go in through this top window. When I come out through the front door, I'll have a sack over my shoulder with swag on it. In the meantime, if you ask that pretty lady what I'm doing, she'll tell you the story. That's all, really. It's kind of dull, but it's all I've got."
I hope your gallantry paid off.
I'm sorry, I really can't go into that.
Right, well, we've
I want to
heard
protect
from the
the
panel. Now, let's listen to the repertory company as they lead us into tonight's first case. It happened after a policeman spotted a car that appeared to have been driven into a roadside ditch. The car was empty, so he used his two-way radio to check on the car's registration number. He found the owner was a woman who lived just round the corner. So he went round to her address to see if anyone was hurt or if any assistance was needed.
There must be someone in. I can hear the radio playing. It's careless. The door's unlocked. Hello? Anyone in?
Who's that?
It's all right, Mrs. Hayes. I'm a policeman.
Who let you in?
Sorry to disturb you, but I've just spotted your car in the ditch. You all right?
Yes, I'm fine. It was just a little skid. I've called the RAC. They'll be along soon enough to pull it out. No one was hurt, so there was no need to call the police in. But thanks for asking anyway.
You sure you're all right? You look a bit unsteady on your feet.
I've told you I'm okay. I was just about to get into the bar. You can hear it running upstairs. You found your way in, so perhaps you'd like to find your way out again so I can get on with it. Whoop!
You are unsteady. You've been drinking?
No, just a little shaky after the skid. I'll be as right as rain after a bath. Now, will you go, please?
You say you skidded into that ditch. It hasn't rained for 2 days. How come you skidded?
I don't know. Maybe there was some oil on the road.
I didn't see any. Are your tyres under the permitted tread?
No, they're not. The car's only 6 months old. It's done less than 4,000 miles. You can go and check that for yourself.
Yes, I probably will in a minute. But first I want you to take a breath test.
Look, I told you I haven't been drinking. And anyway, my bath water will run over.
I'll nip up and turn it off. And meanwhile, you can blow into this.
I'm not blowing into anything. I've told you I have not been drinking, and I'm not wasting my time blowing into your silly bag.
Mrs. Hayes.
Especially when you've no right to be here in the first place. You came in here without my permission and with no search warrant. You're trespassing.
Mrs. Hayes, I'm asking you once more, are you going to blow into this bag?
And I'm telling you once more, no.
In that case, I'll have to ask you to accompany me to the police station.
This is my own private property. You have no right to be here. Will you get out of my house?
Mrs. Hayes, I have reason to believe that you've been drinking while in charge of a vehicle.
Rubbish.
I've asked you to take a breath test and you've refused. I've asked you to accompany me to the station and you've refused that too.
I have asked you to leave and you refused.
Mrs. Hayes, you're under arrest. I'm taking you down to the station, and if necessary, I'm prepared to use force. The choice is yours.
No wonder they call it a police state. I'll see you get into trouble for this.
Adams?
Yes, Inspector?
Come to my office, will you? Shut the door.
Yes, sir. Is there a problem?
Well, that lady you brought in, Mrs. Hayes. She's filed a complaint against you for trespassing.
Well, sir, I didn't actually break in. The door wasn't locked.
Yeah, I know all about that. I've read your report. You were exceeding your authority.
Sir?
However, she was wrong and lying to you about not drinking. The blood test shows she'd had over the limit.
So I was right.
Yeah, but you went about it the wrong way. Anyway, I've had a word with the superintendent about it, and he says we should take a chance and go ahead. We're charging the lady with driving with excess alcohol.
But if, as you say, I was trespassing, sir, doesn't that mean Mrs. Hayes will automatically get away with it?
Oh, but that's up to the magistrates. We shall have to wait and see.
And now, panel, you become the magistrates. Mrs. Hayes is charged with driving with excess alcohol. How are you going to find Nigel Reese? What do you think?
Oh, she got off, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, if I'd been running my bath and a policeman came in through the door, I would have been deeply offended. I don't think policemen can just walk into your house. So I think that's one reason why she got off. And I think the doubts expressed by his superior officer perhaps support me in this. So that, in my rather confused way, is why I think, without a shadow of a doubt, she got off.
She will get off. All right, you'd let her go. Jean Rook.
I would have thought that there might be a good argument on the side of the police. Their argument that they might put forward was that she was a danger to herself. She was drunk, and she'd left the bath running. And if she passed out, goodness knows what could have happened. On the other hand, I hated the policeman, so I reckon she did, in fact, get off.
Very lenient, Magistrate Rook. What about William Franklyn?
Obviously, the only thing she could be charged was drinking in charge of a running bath. Because she was, in fact, in her own home. Now, the accident, obviously, was very upsetting. She arrived home a little shaken and had a small tincture. Maybe a second tincture. There's no evidence whatsoever that she was anywhere near her car when she'd been drinking. And I would suggest that the breath test to stand up in court would have had to have been conducted either at the scene of the accident or at a police station. Any diversion, i.e. back to her cocktail cabinet at home, depending on whether she lived at Neasden or wherever it was, surely that's relevant. I think she'd have got off without any doubt.
All right, all three of you would let her off. Now, Nigel Rees, you have 50 points to gamble with that you are right in your verdict. How many?
40 points.
You bet 40 points. Right. Jean Rook, how many will you bet that you are right?
Bill's put me right off. I never thought of her coming in and having a quick, 3-bottle orgy in 2 seconds. I'll only put 15 on there.
Oh, it's shaken you.
15, I'm shaken.
It's shaken your confidence, has it? All right. William Franklyn.
25. Let's split the difference.
25, that's what I like to hear. So, all of you bet that she got off. Mrs. Hayes was convicted. She was convicted of driving with excess alcohol. The magistrate said that though the police constable had overstepped his authority in entering her house without permission or warrant, that did not excuse the lady of driving with too much drink. The policeman had acted in good faith, but his mistake in exceeding his authority did not make the blood test evidence inadmissible. Nigel, you went rather berserk there with 40 points. Means you've only got 10 left.
Oh, dear.
However, there are 2 cases to go. You can recoup. Jean Rook, 15 you bet, 35 points you're left with. Bill, you've got 25 points left. So, Jean, you are in the lead as we go on to our second case. Though this one is set in court. On this programme, we do tend to cut corners on strict legal procedure, otherwise we'd be here all night. It's a case where a man who rented a council house sued the council for being in breach of a repairing covenant imposed upon them by the 1961 Housing Act. We will eavesdrop on the proceedings from the point where the lady counsel for the tenant is putting questions to her client.
Mr. Sorrell, you and your family have lived at number 26 Alderney Avenue for almost 8 years now. Did you not notice any sign of this damaging condensation when you moved in?
None at all. The house had been decorated by the council after the previous tenant moved out. And it was in the middle of summer when the windows were kept open for long periods, which prevented condensation forming.
How long was it before you noticed the house had these serious condensation problems?
It took about 2 years. We began to find that our clothes in the fitted wardrobes, clothes that were resting against the wall, were damp and had patches of mildew on them. 2 of my suits were ruined. And my wife threw out 3 of her dresses and a couple of fairly new skirts.
And is the situation getting worse, would you say?
Oh, definitely. Now we have it's a sort of fungus smell. It's as if you're in a room full of damp washing.
We know you first lodged a complaint to the council 5 years ago. Did they do anything?
Oh, yes. I sent round a man from the Borough Surveyor's office. A nice fella, very sympathetic.
Presumably he diagnosed the trouble.
Oh, yes, he said that we had some penetrating dampness because of damage to the front door, and there was a small gap on the windowsill of the lounge.
I see.
But the main trouble was undoubtedly caused, he said, by the condensation, and that was due to inadequate insulation and poor heating.
But, Your Honour, despite the fact that my client kept reminding them of the repairing covenant which they, as landlords, were bound by, they sent no one round.
Well, that's right. If they had, I wouldn't have brought this case. I mean, it's got beyond a joke. My curtains, carpets, clothes, they've all been ruined. The place is almost uninhabitable.
But you, Mr. Sorrell, have never withheld your weekly rent payments in protest.
Oh, no, that will put me in the wrong. No, I wouldn't do that.
Thank you, Mr. Sorrell. I've no more questions. You may step down. If I may, Your Honour, I'd like to recall the council's representative, Mr. Perkins, to the stand.
Yes, you may. Mr. Perkins, would you retake the stand, please? I must remind you are still under oath.
Mr. Perkins, do the council deny having been repeatedly told by Mr. Sorrell of the sorry condition of his house?
No. He put most of his complaints in writing, and we have them on file.
But you did nothing to alleviate his problem.
Let me say that we are arranging for the Sorrell family to be moved to another of our houses of similar size. The only reason we're fighting this case is that Mr. Sorrell is asking us to compensate him substantially for the alleged damage to his decorations and personal belongings, and also for the inconvenience caused.
You're not denying there was inconvenience?
No, only that it was our responsibility. The repairing covenant obligates us to carry out repairs, but as we see it, there is nothing in disrepair. The lintels and window frames are in exactly the same condition as they were when the Sorrells moved in, and indeed exactly as they were when the house was built 15 years ago, in accordance with the building standards which then prevailed. In our opinion, we owe no duty of compensation to Mr. Sorrell.
Well, before I ask you to pronounce judgment, panel, let me tell you that Mr. Sorrell had brought the case to the county court for damages for breach of the repairing covenant implied by the 1961 Housing Act, which, of course, you will be familiar with, I've no doubt. Now, he was entitled to that if the council had breached the covenant. So, did he get his money, or did he not, Jean Rook?
Do you know, I'm absolutely sure he didn't, although there's every reason that he should have. I mean, everything that he said I would agree with, but I've got a feeling that knowing councils, that they are so clever that they got out of it. I'm absolutely positive that they did.
So you feel he would not have got compensation?
I feel that he should have, but I'm darn sure he didn't.
All right, William Franklyn.
He did originally complain 5 years ago. He has gone on living there. All the information we were given was about this repairing covenant, and that's all. There was no mention of any compensation if the repairing covenant wasn't actually applied, and he didn't seem to be actually suing for the lack of repairs. He seemed to be just suing for the damage to his goods. Is that right?
That's right. Yes, he was suing for compensation.
I'm afraid, knowing the law and councils, which do behave in a very arbitrary way, I don't think he did get it, regrettably.
You don't? All right. So you go along with Jean on that, Nigel Rees?
I rather agree with Jean and Bill that Mr. Sorrell didn't win his case, and the council, in their no doubt extremely well-briefed way, carried the day. Yes, I think he lost. He lost.
So all three of you stand by that he lost his case. Well, now it comes down to points, doesn't it? You're once again all in agreement. Jean Rook, you've got 35 points. How many will you bet that you are right? He didn't get his money.
32.
William Franklyn, taking me by surprise. William Franklyn, how many will you bet that you're right?
I'll have 20's worth, because it will only leave me with 5 if I lose.
Sure, so you've got 5 to play with if you come unstuck. That's fine. Nigel Rees, you've got 10. This could be your big moment.
I think it could be a very small moment, sure. I'm going to just put a mere 5.
5, just in case. All right, you've all bet that Mr. Sorrell lost, or Mr. Sorrell, and indeed, Mr. Sorrell did lose his case, and you have won. Well done. I'll tell you why. The court held that the council's landlord was not responsible under the 1961 Housing Act to put right inherent faults in the house. In other words, there were inherent faults because those cold lintels and metal frame windows were approved under the building standards that existed at that time. And the council said they are not in disrepair, they're exactly the same as they were when they were put in. All right, so under the regulations as they were then, they were acceptable. Now they're not acceptable, but we are still not liable for compensation because it is an inherent fault. And the magistrate said, that is so Mr. Sorrell didn't get a penny. But you get some points, don't you? You get 5 points, Nigel Rees, which takes you up to 15. William, 25, you bet, so you've gone up now to... No, 20 you bet, didn't you? Takes you up to 45. But Jean, with 32 points, you've leapt up to 67. You're well in the lead. Well done. Right, final case coming up. A medical background to this one. It starts in the maternity ward of a hospital where Mrs. Paget had been taken while on a business trip. The labour pains had started a month earlier than she expected.
Congratulations, Mrs. Paget. You've had a beautiful 6 pounds baby girl.
It's not what I wanted. So you can forget the congratulations, Doctor. I never wanted a child. I'm just not the maternal type. I'm a career woman. At least I was a career woman. I paid almost £1,000 to a Harley Street doctor to be sterilised.
Oh, darling, I rushed here as soon as I heard. Are you all right?
This is my husband, Doctor. Yes, I'm all right. And according to that noise your daughter's making back there, so is she.
Oh, it's a girl, is it?
Yes, but your wife doesn't appear to be too pleased about whatever gender it is.
Well, how would you feel if you'd gone to all that expense and bother of an operation and then found out it was all a waste of time? I wound up having a baby and losing a career.
Well, let's not argue about that now, dear. I'm sure you ought to be having some rest.
Some sleep will do her good. I'm sure she'll feel better later. I'll send the nurse in with a sedative. We'll take the baby down the hall so it'll be quieter. You can see her on your way out.
Oh, thank you, Doctor. I appreciate your help.
Goodbye, Mrs. Paget. I'll pop in again this evening. Come on, my beauty. Your mother needs to get some rest.
Well, what are we going to do about it?
I told you, we'll discuss it later. If, when you've given yourself time to think about it, you still want the baby adopted, then I'll sort out what has to be done.
Meanwhile, there's something you can do right now.
Yes, darling.
Sue the specialist.
Sue him? On what grounds?
On the grounds that he's incompetent or negligent or whatever you want. He took over £900 for that operation to prevent me going through all this.
Well, no operation can be guaranteed successful.
But he said it was irreversible, and my sister was there when he said it. That's good enough to get him. She'll gladly be a witness.
Well, perhaps we should just ask him for the money back.
No, he lied to us, so we'll sue him. Let him have the bad publicity, and I hope they check him off the medical register. Let him go through some of the pain I've gone through thanks to his lies.
So the Pagets took the doctor to court for breach of contract on the grounds that it was an express term of that contract that the operation would render her sterile, and it didn't. Who won the case and why? Well, now, Jean, you are a career lady, so I'll leave you until last. William, this is a sort of delicate thing you would be very good at. So what is your opinion in this case, Judge Franklyn?
Yes, I think I think act of nature is probably at the base of it all. I don't think there's any possibility of a guarantee of success. I think the operation is going to be carried out with that intention, and I would have thought legally the intention may be there, but I mean the chance of it actually being guaranteed don't exist, and therefore without a guarantee I wouldn't have thought necessarily it was a legal case, because nature comes into it. I mean, all the whole human condition, people who've had coils fitted, whatever it is, I don't think there's any foolproof system.
So Mrs. Paget would lose her case?
Sorry?
You say Mrs. Paget would lose her case and the doctor would not?
Well, I think so. I mean, I think the publicity would probably give the doctor a couple of migraines, but I don't think, in fact, I have a feeling that she wouldn't get it.
All right, you're on the side of the doctor. Nigel Rees.
I'm surprised that the doctor said that it was
irreversible.
Irreversible. I mean, it's just not the sort of thing people say.
Well, he was trying to say he'd taken something away that couldn't be put back.
Yes, but I just somehow feel that no doctor really would say that. So it makes me extremely suspicious. I don't really know, but I would be very surprised if the woman won.
You would?
Yeah.
So you're going along with William on that?
Yep.
You find against her as well. Jean, the only woman on our bench, what do
The
you
only
find?
career woman whose 14-year-old son is the dearest thing in her life. Well, no, I don't think she can win, because they, act of God, or in this case, act of man, or whatever. No, I mean, they have. I seem to remember reading in the paper, mind you, I never believe everything I read in papers. Vasectomy cases where chaps have said, hey, this was supposed to be all tied up and so forth, and it
No, not tied up. Not quite the expression, but
it
please
hasn't
go on.
worked that way. No, I fear she would not win.
She would lose as well.
Yeah.
So you are unanimous yet again. Right, William, how many points? You've got 45 to bet.
Well, I've got nothing to lose except 45 points, so have the whole lot.
The whole lot?
Yeah.
So you shall.
Nigel?
Nigel?
Game.
you have 15 points. What will you go?
I'll give, I can't give 7.5, so I'll give 8.
You'll give 8.
Right down
All
the
right.
middle.
Jean, you have 67 points.
Well, I'm going to be awfully Yorkshire mean. I mean, I'm going to keep some of them. I'll give 37.
37. All right, so you shall. You all say that the Pagets lost their case, and indeed they did. The court held that the contention the doctor had contracted to render Mrs. Paget sterile could not be sustained. There was no sterilisation procedure that was entirely without risk of subsequent pregnancy. The doctor had merely contracted to carry out a sterilisation operation. Though he said the operation was irreversible, it did not imply it was bound to achieve its acknowledged object. Those are the words in law. Of course, if he had performed the operation negligently, which was never proved, then it could have been a different matter. However, you all gave me very good answers. You gave me the right answers. I won't bother to double up your points because you were all agreed on it. I will tell you that Nigel, with your great burst at the beginning, has left you with 23 points, because you didn't have a lot to play with, did you? William Franklyn, 90 points you have, but our winner this week is Jean Rook with 104 points. No more cases tonight, but don't rush away just yet. I just want to tell you about one of the cases we'll feature next week. It concerns a lady who left a hotel without paying the rather large bill that she'd built up. But when they took her to court under the Theft Act, she contended that she did intend to pay as soon as the financial situation was settled, and that because she hadn't intended to permanently deprive the hotel of the money, she wasn't guilty of theft. Was she right or was she wrong? Well, tune in next week and find out. Until then, I will simply say good night on behalf of tonight's panel of Nigel Rees, Jean Rook and William Franklyn, our resident repertory company of Gordon Reed, Avril Clark and Michael Hadley, deviser and writer Brad Ashton, legal advisor Doug Cracknell, producer Andy Aliff, and from me, Shaw Taylor. Bye-bye for now. Thank you.